You're going to be looking at a fair bit of repetition work because I'm proposing to make probably 5 or 6 Berkshire tenders. This is a very old school way of doing it. I mean, I could go down the photo etching route, but I've got this fantastic old beast here, which is a Taylor Hobson Model D Pantograph Engraver. I haven't used this probably for about 3 or 4 years, from when I actually finished working in gauge 1 and gauge 3, where I used to use it to cut a lot of parts out. And it's not really designed to go down to the small sizes that we need in Z. However, I've just humped it out of its dark corner. I'm going to give it a clean up, and hopefully we'll be, within the next few days, it'll be knocking out the bottoms, tops and sides and ends of a nickel plate road Berkshire. May also try and do the cosmetic outside frames with a 4-wheel trailing truck on it, if it'll screw down that far. Basically how it works is you can put a pattern on this bit here, and all it needs to be made out of is reasonably thick plasticard, 3 or 4 times bigger than the bit that you actually want to make. This stylus will actually follow the pattern as it goes along, and the cutter at the other end, that motion's reduced to the scale you want. So basically you have a little spinning milling cutter in here, cutting either your free cutting brassy or nickel silver, following a larger scale plastic pattern. Very old school, but it's actually very effective. Well, that was pretty mucky. You can tell it's not been used for a couple of years. The thing to do now is go and get a clean area of the workshop, and we'll make some patterns out of plasticard for the tender sides, and we'll give it a whirl and see if it's still doing the job. Right, now we're back in the office where it's relatively clean. We're going to use Photoshop. We've already used Photoshop to shrink the drawings down to Z gauge from the original HO ones. We've also used it to blow up certain areas when we needed to get a rough idea of what was going off. What we're going to do now is actually create a double or triple size drawing of the part that we actually want, which is then going to be transferred directly onto plasticard to form the pattern for the Pantograph Engraver. The pixels are relatively easy to work out how big it wants to go. And then I'm just going to print that out on normal white paper. The next thing I need now is the other side, so basically I'm just going to flip this drawing over so I get a mirror image of what we've already printed out. And then I'm going to basically print it out again. In the clean office that I've got is this very old light desk I made probably 20 years ago, which serves a dual purpose. One is it's helping me sort out all my old colour trannies as I'm scanning them in, but it's also a very good area to work for doing things like cutting out plasticard, decaling, because quite often when you're cutting white decals out, the easiest way is to light them from underneath so you can see what you're doing. And this is where we're going to work and cut out the pattern for the tender sides and cab. So I've just rested these together. We've got toolbox front, left hand side, the back, right hand side, and the right hand side toolbox front. And that's the size of the pattern that we're going to put on top of the Pantograph Engraver. And we'll cut all this out in nickel silver in one piece and then fold it up in a folding press. I'm not going too mad with the thickness of the plasticard. I want something that's going to cut out fairly easily. This is about 20-30 thou I suppose. So long as there's a decent enough lip for the stylus on the Pantograph Engraver to rest against, we don't need to go too mad. If it's something I was going to make a lot of, and I used to make a lot of like W irons in gauge 1 for the German layout, I'd actually make this out of perspex, which proves a lot more durable in the long term. To fasten the paper patterns to the plasticard, we're going to use quick tackle or equivalent, basically an aerosol glue. This stuff stinks, so basically I'm going to open a window and I'm only going to do one bit of paper at a time, otherwise you're going to get into problems. I'm also going to work on newspaper because this stuff makes a mess of everything. So there we've got the front, sides and back of a Berkshire tender laid out flat, so we can basically cut all them out in one piece from nickel silver. Now the pattern's complete, I've scribed the areas where we're going to fold it, round the sides and round the back, and we're going to glue it onto a piece of perspex which we've already clamped to the top of the machine. This is piece of perspex being used numerous times, but basically this will hold the pattern when we start working it round with the stylus. One of the things you find with small components as you're cutting them out is that as you get to the final cut and it actually starts to separate from the sheet, there's a tendency if it's loose for it to rattle into the cutter. So what we're going to do is we're going to fasten the nickel silver sheet down onto the bit of wood that we're going to use as support with multiple strips of double-sided tape, so that as the bits finally separate out they don't move. Then I'll be using some lighter fluid to soften the glue afterwards. So there we've got one flat pack Berkshire tender. Still needs deburring. I've actually cleaned the tape off just with a bit of lighter fluid. Not convinced by the fold lines. Might need to use a sharper stylus just to get them, and also cut them slightly shallower. I don't want to make them too deep, but that should fold up into a reasonably accurate NKP tender. So I've got a pattern that works reasonably well. We can now churn out identical S1 Berkshire tenders, many as we want, basically out of one sheet of nickel silver, and they should all come out identical.